Good morning and welcome to Newsfile. Article 257, Clause 6 of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, the supreme law of the land, reads, every mineral in its natural states in, under, or upon any land in Ghana, rivers, streams, water courses throughout Ghana, the exclusive economic zone, and any area covered by the territorial sea or continental shelf is the property of the Republic of Ghana and shall be vested in the President on behalf of and in trust for the people of Ghana. This article commences by saying all public lands in Ghana shall be vested in the President on behalf of and in trust for the people of Ghana. The people of Ghana, at least a great majority, are unanimous that the President is not protecting these lands vested in him in trust for the people of Ghana in the manner he's supposed to do. Organized labor and various trade unions and groups called on the President to do a number of things, including that he should invoke Article 31. It reads, the President may, acting in accordance with the advice of the Council of State by proclamation published in the Gazette, declare that a state of emergency exists in Ghana or in any part of Ghana for the purposes of the provisions of this Constitution. Organized labor says, yes, the President has not done this emergency declaration, but he has met most of our demands. Therefore, we call off the strike that we intended to go on. UTAG disagrees. They strike because the first demand must be met. Now, the Catholic Church, Accra, together with the Conference of Major Superiors of Religion, also took to the streets in prayer. And their first demand is the declaration of a state of emergency. There have been troops on the field burning champagnes on the river bodies. How do we sustain this to save the land from further damage? We have yet another special edition for you this morning, so don't go anywhere. We are talking Galamsey and the fights. There has been some delay. 230 days after Parliament passed the anti-gay bill, it still has not been assented to by the President to become law. Is the CJ to blame or the Supreme Court? A group hit the streets accusing the CJ of the delays. Is the evidence not otherwise? We'll be right back. Welcome, and here is Samson's take. Laudato Si, caring for our common home. It's a Latin phrase and it means praise be. Laudato Si is the name of Pope Francis's encyclical on caring for our common home, planet Earth. The letter is addressed to every person living on this planet and calls for a global dialogue about how we are shaping the future of our planet through our daily actions and decisions. The Accra Archdiocese of the Catholic Church, Ghana, with the Conference of Major Superiors of Religious, took to the streets of Accra yesterday in prayer with their rosaries in hand to manifest their care for Mother Earth and the need to halt the Galamsey destruction.
Exodus chapter 20, verse 15. Mr. President, we are grateful something is being done about the situation. However, we ask you to crack the whip. Environmental groundwork is neither NPP nor NDC. Let each flag bearer call his or her followers to lay down their tools. As a church, we are very concerned. Galamsey cuts across religions and denominations. Those in the page looking for gold are Catholics, Methodists, Anglicans, Pentecostals, Charismatics, Traditionalists, etc. I vehemently call on my Catholics to lay down their tools. You too, leaders of other religions and pastors of souls, do the same. Perhaps you can get a few people to relinquish their actions and repent. As a church, we are very concerned. Galamsey casts across ethnic groups. Some of those in the pit looking for gold are Ahanta, Fanti, Eve, Asante, Gan, Guan, Dagaba, Aoza, etc., etc. These ethnic groups have overlords of paramount chiefs. We call on all chiefs and overlords to come on board to stop the menace. Are we going to sit down unconcerned? If there is something for us to do for this country, it is this. We don't want to give birth to deformed babies. Babies with 3 or 5 limbs, or babies with brain disorders. As a church, we are very concerned. Please stop Galamsey. It is and will disfigure those who are yet unborn. If a manifesto of any political party doesn't say anything concretely against Galamsey in this era, know this for sure, it is no manifesto. If your manifesto doesn't clearly outline plans against Galamsey, then it suggests that you want us dead, as well as the living creatures in our river bodies. We are looking for a leader who will call a spade a spade. A leader who will have a plan to deal with the problem. We all have a responsibility of taking care of our common home. May this work remind us all of that. May this prayer work cause repentance in the hearts of us all, especially those engaged in Galamsey. May Mary, our mother, pray for us and help us to be victorious in this battle. May God hear our prayer and make our nation great and strong. Amen.
The Archbishop John Bonaventure Kofi speaking after yesterday's prayer walk by the Catholic Church Archdiocese of Accra. And as we understand what informed the basis of their prayer walk, the Laudato Si, caring for our common home, by the Pope, according to Cardinal Peter Appiah Texin, is actually a document that is being presented to the UN to assist, to help the whole world on how to end the damage being done to Mother Earth. Ecocide, they call it. That is my take. Welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. As we did last week, we have another assemblage of some of the best brains with technical expertise to help us this morning. But we have also lawyers, at least a lawyer. We have someone from the Ghana Coalition Against Galamsey. All of them will help us within brief segments on this discussion. So my guests, Dr. Albert Kobna-Mensah, research scientist, CSIR, Soil Research Institute. Dr. Bright Boafo Boama is medical doctor and toxicologist. Rosalind Yeboah is minerals engineer and senior metallurgist. Ascot Gold Mine in Canada. Kwabna Adair Sapong is graduate research assistant and PhD candidate, Washington State University's Crop and Soil Science Department. Janet Efua Pokua Aqua is metallurgical engineer. Dr. Alexander Enim Mensah is chemical engineer and president, I2I Mega Hub. And Dr. Theo Echampong is mineral and natural resources economist. Professor Kwejo Appiah is with the School of Law, University of Ghana. Frank B. Edu Jr. is retired banker. You know him, that respected banker. And member, Ghana Anti-Galamsey Coalition. Also, Yao Insako also belongs to the same coalition, the Ghana Coalition Against Galamsey. And here in the studio, Felicity Nelson is a social justice activist. Good morning, gentlemen, ladies. Good morning, Felicity.
Good morning, Samson.
Good to have you here.
Good morning.
Thank you.
How does it feel to have your liberty?
Oh, of course, it feels great. I'm happy to be back home. Yeah, I'm happy to be out.
How does it feel to be out there in those cells and prisons? For people who have no idea how it looks like in some of these places, how does it feel like?
Okay, so I was initially at the Railways police station. And I would liken that cell to when you go to Cape Coast to where the slaves were kept. As dark as that, that thing was probably built during the colonial times, that's what it looks like. It was as dark as that. There's no light in the cell, and there's very minute holes for, air and I guess light to pass through from the outside. And it looked and smelt like, it'd been used as a slave somewhere that they kept slaves.
So if you don't know, the conversation about Galamsey led the Democracy Hub to the streets for a 3-day protest. And that 3-day protest resulted in some excesses and some or 54 of the protesters being arrested. And as you have heard me say over and again, just damning injustice, bizarre, sad, embarrassing, done in the way they were handled. The police did not grant them bail, it could grant them bail. They took them, Attorney General took them to court. The courts exercised a discretion which was so, against Article 296 of the Constitution and denied them bail, kept them for 2 weeks. And upon the 2 weeks, when they finally got bail, just processing something that should take minutes took days. So how many of you are on bail now?
53. So Oliver's the only one who hasn't been granted.
Oliver Barker-Vomawo is the one who is still in custody. We'll rejoin you shortly. Right, so get hooked because the show is packed. Now let me go to my guests who are joining us via Zoom. Dr. Albert Kobna-Mensah, research scientist, CSIR Soil Research Institute. We are literally, as Cardinal Peter Piatexin says, doing such damage that we dig the gold, sell the gold, we get money, but we are getting to a time the money we'll get from the gold can't buy the basic things of life that we need to survive. It can't buy water because there will not be water for us here. It can't buy food because the food is poisoned. What's your examination? Please unmute your mic. Hello, Doc. Okay, so just a little problem with... you can hear us. The thing is, we need you to unmute your mic. We can't hear you. Hello, Dr. Kobna-Mensah. Okay, so a number of your colleagues who are also standing by must be ready. Dr. Bright Boafo Boama, medical doctor and toxicologist. What do you say to the question that I just posed, reflecting on what Cardinal Peter Piatexin has to say?
Yeah, I think he's perfectly right. Looking at what we have as natural resource, I think water is one of the essential commodities. I think prior to 2018, globally, there's a prediction of water shortage. So I know a couple of countries are trying to conserve their waters. Some don't even have the number of fresh waters that we do in Ghana, but they are still trying to find alternatives to preserve their water. So I think what he's saying is perfectly right. If we have all the money and we can't even buy water, then what's the essence of having all this money? Because water is essential. It forms the basis of life. From medicines that we take in, food, everything, we need water for it. So I think he's perfectly right on that regard.
So let's hear your expert examination of the circumstance that we face. I call it a genocide because it is a gradual extermination of the people that God put on this piece of earth called Ghana.
I think your description is, I'll say, spot on. Now, looking at the activities ongoing with this Galamsey, the main, I would say, chemicals or the main pollutants in here are mainly heavy metals. And I've done some collaboration with Dr. Ose Sampini, and I have some data around. And most of the chemicals in here are heavy metals, especially mercury, cadmium, arsenic, and there's also lead in there. But I think the main issue is we are focusing more on the mercury, but there are other contaminants in there, which I just mentioned. The issue is that when you have these metals coming together, they actually behave differently. That's where the problem lies. Now, most of these workers who are exposed even to the skin, so some of these metals are able to react with the UV light and induce skin cancers. For that, we don't even know about it. I mean, nobody has actually characterized even the contaminants in the water that we have. So we actually don't know what we are dealing with. The only metal that we can actually predict is possibly mercury because they use in the extractions. Now, one main problem with these heavy metals is, unlike other materials like possibly food, it can break down in the environment. These heavy metals never break down. They do not break down. They live in the environment for a very long time. They only change their form, and because they're able to change their form, they're able to live in the environment for long, and they can pass through the food chain. So you mentioned about crops, so they can pass through food, they can get into the fish. So one other challenge is, I know people who are far away from these mining communities might possibly think they are safe, but considering the nature of the contaminants at hand, they are not. Because these communities are actually farming communities, and it means they are involved in production of vegetables, fruits, exporting to the bigger cities. Also, when we talk about fish, fish is one stubborn, I would say, product because it's able to actually bioaccumulate these heavy metals in them. And these heavy metals, the most susceptible groups that we have are children, pregnant women, and even the elderly. And I also have some, there's some data as well on some of these metals.
Am I sensing that you are even hedging? There's a sense of hesitation to want to share the data you're dealing with. Because for someone who has worked with Dr. Osai Sampeni, and I've seen some of his work, he shared some of the work with me, we are simply just killing ourselves. Now, we have set the time on a bomb, and that's what is going on. Please, don't be hesitant. The leadership need to be aware of what this is. Because the sense of urgency that organized labor, the Catholic Church, Accra, all is asking to proceed with a state of emergency that, sort of energizes the whole state and puts so much at the available to the president, even sort of a suspension of the laws at a certain point. People are talking about the need to shoot and kill. You can't do that under present circumstance. Maybe that is possible under a state of emergency. So don't be hesitant. Don't hedge. Share with us what the details say.
Yeah, so I'm not hesitating, but what I'm trying to put across is this issue. I don't want to sound nihilistic anyway, but I think we've gone far than what we are supposed to do. Because what I think is, now these sites, currently we are dealing with emerging contaminants in the world that we are trying to fight. So issues like Galamsey, these heavy metals should be legacy. I mean, it should be things of the past. But if you are dealing with these issues now, then it means that we are way like years back of protecting our environment. Yeah, so talking about the various issues dealing with these possible heavy metals, we are looking at human health, we are looking at animal health and the environment. So there's this one health paradigm where we kind of put everything together because you cannot separate human health from animal health. Now, looking at one industry that I foresee having a big issue is the pharmaceutical industry. Because in Ghana, I know most of these industries, especially when it comes to the infusions that we use in the hospitals, they need this ultra pure water. And having these heavy metals in them, the treatment is not that easy. And it's very, very expensive. Now, if they are supposed to import water from foreign countries, then it means it's going to cost a lot to actually buy these infusions, and it means it's going to eventually affect human health. Now, one other area where we have been looked at is the issue of antimicrobial resistance. So currently, most of the antibiotics are not responding because normally it's due to poor use of antibiotics or prescriptions. But it's been shown that these heavy metals also induce antimicrobial resistance. So we are not really dealing with a very simple issue at hand. And even if we should look at how to remediate or restore the water bodies, I think even if we should start now, it's going to take somewhere between 10 to 15 years to kind of do this. And I know there are some water bodies that cannot be restored. Others will have to be just closed, possibly not used for drinking or for farming or for any activity at all. So I think what we should do is possibly now just be able to prevent what is going on and protect the ones that have not been impacted upon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Bright Boafo Boama, who is medical doctor and toxicologist. Please hang in there because I'll come to those of you, the experts, before we draw the curtain on your presentations, to give me just a minute of what you think the approach to resolving Galamsey, whether it's effective or it is not, and whether or not you share with the demands for a declaration of a state of emergency. A lawyer would have explained what that is. There's a lawyer who is joining us, so, that's Professor Kujua Pierre. That's the reason he's joining us, just to tell us, to explain to us what is this state of emergency, and what difference at all will it make. Let's hope Dr. Albert Kobna-Mensah of the CSIR Soil Research Institute is still with us and can hear us clearly. Doc, 10 to 15 years to restore the polluted waters back to their natural states. And even that is not guaranteed, seeing the manner in which we are going by this so-called fight. You deal with soil. What do you say?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samson, for the opportunity. And my greetings to all the listeners, and it's a privilege to be on this platform. It's my first time of being on Newsfile, and I'm really privileged to share most of my research findings that we have made here at the Soil Research Institute. So I would like to take a bite briefly at my colleague's presentation. Of course, it is very scary when he did talk about the fact that these heavy metals tend to accumulate in our system. But giving it the year, like 10 years, 20 years to restore, I beg to differ. I beg to differ in the sense that, as a matter of fact, there's a calculation that some of us have done, and we wanted to see how many years it would take for, let's say, for the soil to sort of restore to its natural state. And we were trying to use some plants, which the process is called phytoremediation, to see how it is going to remediate the chemicals from the soil. And the calculation shows, if you want to get to the pristine condition, the calculation shows somewhere more than 300 years. More than 300 years. So, as a matter of fact, when it comes to remediation, or when it comes to restoration of a degraded mining site, we can reclaim to a state that it can be used in another form. But for us to return the land to its original state, it is very dicey. It's very dicey. So it's something that we may have to take into consideration. But of course, we can return the land to forestry.
Go ahead and share your go ahead and share your research results with that, because we're hearing from you to take 300 years. We have heard from another expert who was suggesting 40, 50 or so. But let's keep that conversation going. Let's go straight to what your research reveals, what it is that we are confronted with.
So I have worked on mine tailings that are actually abandoned from the artisanal small-scale mining. And I have also worked on mine tailings from artisanal small-scale mining sites that have been used to grow lettuce. But before I go on, let us take a look at heavy metals. Heavy metals are categorized into two: the essential heavy metal and non-essential heavy metal. Now, the essential heavy metals like zinc, like copper, and others, those ones are needed by the human in certain metabolic processes. But there are others like lead, others like arsenic, others like chromium. Those ones are not needed in any quantity for the plant of human beings to consume. So they become of concern. And actually, this lead, arsenic, and chromium are associated with cancer. Now, apart from the fact that they are associated with cancer, if you look at heavy metal like copper, you see what makes it heavy in this is that it is inorganic, and when it accumulates in the body, it stays there because it is not biodegradable. The body system cannot act on it to sort of biodegrade it, so it sits in there. For instance, when it comes to copper is supposed to be regulated in the human body, so that we don't have to get concerned with copper. But copper stays in the body and it accumulates and it leads to a disease called wasting disease. Now, wasting disease is very much associated with copper, which is called a copper disease, and it's associated with tremors in the hand, tremors in the affected human body. You can take a look at it later. Then, when it comes to issues like arsenic, the International Agency for Research on Cancer actually talks about arsenic as part of the first 10 toxic elements responsible for causing cancer. Now, arsenic is also associated with what is called Buruli ulcer, but then the literature is not directly trying to link arsenic to that. Indeed, the arsenic that was the Buruli ulcer, but interestingly, the literature has found that where Buruli ulcer is endemic, arsenic pollution is also prominent. So it is argued from the literature that arsenic provides a fertile ground for the growth of the bacteria, which is called a mycobacterium ulceran, responsible for causing Buruli ulcer. So some of these things, especially in Dumase, especially in Konongo, they have found that most of these places had Buruli ulcer cases reported in higher numbers. And those areas are also concomitantly associated with arsenic and gold mining. Now, we also did a study where we took a look at 13 papers. And the 13 papers we did was that we were trying to take a look at which of the papers reported arsenic. And we did it across all the gold mining areas here in Ghana. Papers that are talking about arsenic in the blood, arsenic in human samples like the hair, arsenic in food, arsenic in the soil, arsenic in water. And the results that were found, especially arsenic in soil, we could find arsenic of levels at around 8 grams per kilogram. And that is a disaster waiting to happen, in the sense that arsenic, the world soil average of arsenic is 6.83, and the maximum allowed concentration is between 20 to 50 milligram per kilogram. But we have found between 1,804 to 8,000 milligram per kilogram, which is like 1.8 to 8.0 gram per kilogram. So, which is a disaster. And this land is lying idle in Pistia, and it has become a repository for children to use as playground. And there are three main ways by which we can get exposed to these heavy metals. What we call the dermal contact. When you come into contact with the soil, which is contaminated, you can talk about inhalation, where you inhale the soil from dust, Then we can also talk about ingestion. Ingestion in the sense that you can actually eat the soil deliberately or not deliberately. And these children, when they use such abandoned mining sites which are contaminated for playground, they tend to get exposed to these dangerous consequences of these heavy metals. So, but then, of course, when it comes to issues like mercury, mercury is also another contaminant that is of high concern, in the sense that I have seen cases where mercury is associated with deformities in unborn children and even deformities in new babies. Someone showed me a baby that, because of my work with heavy metals, someone showed me a baby that the fingers are 6. The fingers are 6. So, and this person actually lives in a gold mine area. So it can be argued, even though we haven't established a direct correlation between the deformity that was found in the baby and that of the metal, but we can argue that probably actually they may be related. Another issue is that when you go to gold mining areas, there are cases of hypertension, stroke, that are happening actually, which are all connected with heavy metals. Now, these heavy metals, what happens is that if the area is polluted, we have something we call dry deposition. Now, dry deposition, as air lifts the soil which is contaminated and deposit it on your food, you may not see. You deposit it on your dining table, you may not see. You deposit it on your deck, and all that. And all these things tend to get the ramifications of the heinous consequences of these heavy metals. Then again, also, there's something we call wet deposition. Wet deposition is where the heavy metal transports through the action of water into the available groundwater, into the available surface water, and also into the food chain. Now, what happens in the food chain is that the heavy metals become dissolved in the soil solution, and instead of the soil to take the nutrient that is required, like phosphorus, it's mistaking the nutrient for something like arsenic. So you realize that arsenic is very much associated with rice, so much. And there are studies that have linked arsenic in so many areas to rice, rice contamination. It is because of the environment within which rice is grown. Rice is grown under paddy field, and most of these toxic elements become dissolved. So as the rice is taking the nutrient from the soil, then sometimes some of these get absorbed by the rice, and the effect is born on human. So there are studies that are talking about rice arsenic, and one of the ways is to boil your rice, and one of the ways is to wash the rice, and it is found that the number of times you wash the rice will deplete. Let's say if you wash the rice, you tend to wash away the acid more than when you actually wash the rice once. So washing of the rice, boiling, and all that tend to reduce arsenic concentration in rice. Then if I come to end here, another issue here is what we call geophagy. I don't know if there is anyone that has heard of geophagy in the studio, but geophagy is associated with deliberate eating of soil. And we can see that women, especially in Ghana, they eat slave. The pregnant women, they eat slave. That practice of eating the slave is called geophagy. And it is found in the literature. And we had also found that this issue of the women eating the clay may be associated with heavy metals such as cadmium, such as chromium, and such as lead. And so even though they may be eating the clay to obtain nutrients, like their reason for eating the clay is to sort of get nutrients like iron, but they end up eating heavy metals, which we have not looked at. So, and another thing is that if the area is contaminated, if the environment is contaminated, children also practice geophagy, where children put their hands into their mouth. So as they lick their fingers, the child may be exposed to these heavy metals, which on which the child is not aware. So there are numerous ways by which these metals get accumulated into our blood, into our human body, and also into the food that we eat.
Dr. Albert Kobina-Mensah, thank you very much. But like I said, you stay on there because I will come to all of you for just a minute to tell me what you make of the state's approach and response to fighting the Galamsey, whether or not there should be the state of emergency and what else should be done. Having heard the things you have said, I don't know. Rosalind Yeboah is minerals engineer and senior metallurgist, Ascot Gold Mine in Canada. The things you just heard Dr. Albert Kobina-Mensah say, how do you react to them?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. So when we talk of gold, gold is associated with all these heavy metals. So that is how we get these heavy metals, because when the Galamseyers mine the gold, they discharge the waste back into the water bodies. So that is how we get all these heavy metals back into the water bodies or back into the environment. So I just wanted to talk about a bit of the process. I know we've been seeing videos all around, but then the main issue with this Galamsey thing is that gold is very expensive, right? So currently, I think the price of gold is going for about 56 US dollars. And this is just 1 ounce of gold. And the 1 ounce is like 32 grams of gold. So just a very little amount of gold will give you this much money. So the Galamseyers, or the people that live in these mining communities, they make so much money that they forget to, or they don't even think about what the impact of what the activities on the environment. And just as I said, gold is associated with all these heavy metals. So when they mine this gold, or when they take the gold, you see the process that they go through by making like a form of slurry, and then using this chamfan that they put on water, and they are going through a process of concentrating the gold. And when you concentrate gold, you end up also concentrating some of these heavy metals. And when they concentrate it, the main reagent, or what they use is mercury. And this mercury is being discharged as part of the tailings, or they put this mercury back into the water bodies, which also affects the habitat and also the people that even work around this communities, or the people that work in these areas. So the whole issue is a very big issue. And when we look at all these heavy metals that goes into the food chain, goes back into the environment, and even they themselves being affected by it, is a very serious issue. One thing that I actually heard currently is also that that the Galamseyers are also using cyanide, which is a very risky part of this process, because if they are resorting to kind of mimicking what the big mining companies do. I work in a gold mining company, and we use cyanide, but then the cyanide is kind of regularized. Like, we have a system and measures in place to use it safely. But then these mining, the Galamseyers, they don't, I would say most of them don't have proper education on how to use this cyanide. And then cyanide is highly toxic. So if they are resorted to moving from even the mercury, or putting back all these heavy metals into the environment, which is a big effect on us, like on the people and even the environment. And now they are going back into using cyanide, and this whole issue has become a very risky thing that the state, we all have to look into it. I put together some few solutions to it. Like, sometimes it's very good if we declare a state of emergency, but for how long? That is my main concern. That how long can we do this? And then can we put very strict measures to make sure that after the state of emergency, people would not still go back and do the same thing? Because, like I said, gold is very precious, and the money that they get from it. So, for example, a miner may get, let's say, 5 kilograms of gold per month, and that amount of money is almost close to about 400,000 USD. So that's a lot of money. If they are not being cheated, or they give part of this money to the people that they work with, even to the chief, to the traditional leaders. So at the end of the day, solving it has become very, very difficult. But then I was looking at one solution. So the solution being trying to formalize these mining activities, and also promoting sustainable small-scale mining. If we can put like stringent measures in place to ensure that these activities that that is happening we have stringent measures. Like, for example, in Canada here, or even in Ghana, they still do it. I worked in Ghana as well before coming to Canada. Most times have like, for example, the mining inspectors, they would come on unannounced. Even to the big mining companies, they will come unannounced, and I work in the plant. So sometimes when you hear that there is these mining inspectors in the plant, you have to make sure that everything that you are doing, you go to, because we use all the reagents, and we also produce all these heavy metals, because like I said, gold is a concentration method. So we concentrate not just the gold, but we also concentrate heavy metals. So we make sure that everything, all the processes that we do, like in the big mining companies, they are done right. And then they have measures in place for us to reclaim the land, and also treat even the tailings that we generate in the big mining companies. We treat it before we can even discharge part of the water into the environment. So I believe if we can put measures in place to ensure that all these Galamsey or this small scale, we can make it a small scale mining, and then we can put, like, let's say, stringent measures, have some bodies in place. We have a lot of health and safety. We have like metallurgists, like engineers, different people, like different brains come together to help these people, and then get a more formalized way to actually do this mining, this small scale mining, in a more correct way, so that at the end of the day, the tailings that they generate, the tailings don't go back into the environment, but then they're able to treat it, or even reclaim. Like when they mine from a certain part, they have to put it back into the original state, so they can reclaim the land after mining. So that all these, we can put it in a very good
You've been saying something, but I want to ask you this question before I bring in Professor Kojo Appiah-Tua, who is coming to do just one thing for us briefly about explaining for us to understand when the first demand by organized labor and all the other groups, UTAG, Ghana Medical Association, is declare a state of emergency. What does that mean? And what are the implications? Simplify for us to understand what it means to declare a state of emergency in fighting this. But my question to you, Rosalind, is why do you think what you are seeing, in your shot can never happen where you are in Canada?
So yeah, in Canada, they, for you to even, for example, let's as simple as building a house. Like we bought our new house, and then we had to. You can't even come up with your own structure and say build it this way, because it has to conform a community standard. So when you are buying a house, or getting, like, even when you get your own house and you have even the land, for you to erect something and make it permanent, you need to get permits from the government. So they have like standards in place. When it comes to the mining industry, for you, I did my master's at UBC, and then I was looking at an alternative to cyanide. So because cyanide is very toxic. So I was looking at a different reagent to make it less toxic, because BC, which is British Columbia, they don't, I think they put a ban on the use of cyanide. So most mining companies were not able to use cyanide. They have other provinces like Ontario, they use a lot of cyanide, which is still very good. Like, they have put measures in place, and they allow them, but BC put a ban on the use of cyanide. So they have a lot of measures in place before you can get even permitting to mine, or permitting to put up like a whole mining industry, you have to go through a whole lot of like processes. Like my current mine, they weren't even allowed to mine a certain concession, which was like has been mined in a couple of years ago. And they said, no, you have to still they have to go through a whole lot of permitting issues. So we're delayed to even mine from that concession.
Okay.
So they have measures in place. And that is what I believe, if Ghana, or if we can actually put measures like stringent measures in place, get most people involved, even the communities, the leaders, and get them involved to put in place.
Thank you.
I believe that this issue.
Thank you, Rosalind, and hang in there for me. I'll return to you. Joining us is Professor Kwadwo Appiagyei Etua of the School of Law, University of Ghana. Recently, he wrote an article on declaration of a state of emergency after students of that university, students of international law, human rights law of the University of Ghana School of Law, held a press conference. That was sometime in July or so, asking that the president should declare a state of emergency. In May or November, thereabouts, in 2022, Occupy Ghana was the very first to moot the idea of a state of emergency. We have come how many years? And the president or the government doesn't seem to want to think about that at all. Prof, thanks for joining us. Prof, please unmute your mic. Hello, Prof.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Good.
Hello, Sam.
Right. So a declaration of a state of emergency. Help us to understand what that exactly means. Article 31 of the Constitution says the President may, acting in accordance with the advice of the Council of State, by proclamation published in the Gazette, declare that a state of emergency exists in Ghana or in any part of Ghana for the purposes of the provisions of this Constitution. If the President does the declaration, then the Constitution requires that within 72 hours, he must notify Parliament, so Parliament will confirm it. If he doesn't do that, then it will lapse. The Constitution says the state of emergency shall cease to have effect at the expiration of a period of 7 days, beginning with the date of the publication of the declaration, unless before the expiration of that period, it is approved by resolution passed for that purpose by a majority of all the members of Parliament. What is this thing? What does it mean?
Thank you. Well, first of all, before we talk about state of emergency, we need to talk about human rights itself, because human rights, state of emergency calls for suspension or limiting the enjoyment of human rights in order to achieve a particular purpose. So human beings are entitled to enjoy human rights. They are inherent in us, they are inalienable. And we enjoy rights to be able to enable us live, first of all, as human beings, and to enable us to attain development and so on. Now, when we enjoy these rights, we stand in a place of being the rights holders. And on the other side of it, we have the state as the duty bearers. And as duty bearers, there's a threefold duty on the state, which is first is to respect the enjoyment of these rights. In other words, the state is not supposed to do anything that will interfere in the enjoyment of our rights. Second duty is to protect the individuals in the state from third parties interfering in the enjoyment of their rights. And the third one is to fulfill, that is to put in place certain amenities and resources to enable human beings to enjoy their rights. Now, there comes a time when certain situations may arise, which creates a conflict between the rights that we enjoy and the urgency needed to resolve certain problems which have emerged in the society, which by way of ordinary practice, the everyday practice, the state, it doesn't have the capacity to resolve that problem. So it calls for derogation or suspension of some rights so that the state can properly perform this function. And when the problem is overcome, then the rights which were suspended or derogated from by the state will be restored and life will continue as normal. Now, because of the fact that states have the capacity to abuse rights, certain structures need to be put in place before a state of emergency can be declared. And so first of all, we have to ask ourselves, or the first condition to be met is, what is the problem that has arisen, which is so overwhelming that the state cannot use the usual structures and procedures to perform its obligation of ensuring that life goes on as normal. And this condition, we can have a situation, for example, a natural disaster, or where there is a particular problem which poses an existential threat to the state, as we have sought to describe the Galamsey issue. So when that situation arises, then it means that the state can call for derogation of a state of emergency. And during this period, it means that certain rights can be suspended. And it's not all rights. We as human beings, we don't enjoy absolute rights. We on our own, some rights are limited in their enjoyment so that others can also enjoy their rights. But when the state of emergency is declared, certain rights are derogated from. So if you look at Article 4.1 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it talks about certain rights like freedom of religion, freedom from slavery, and others which cannot be derogated from even during periods of emergency, including the right to life. So when the state meets these conditions, then it can call for a state of emergency. And like I said, a state of emergency cannot be permanent. That is why you recall in the case that we brought before the Supreme Court, the imposition of the COVID-19 law which the government made, Imposition of Restrictions Act. The Supreme Court held that there is no sunset clause which should limit the enjoyment of those rights. And on those grounds, they declared that the law should be declared as null and void, and it should be repealed. And so when we go to
Okay, so Prof's line is freezing a bit. Yeah, let's try.
I've come to the conclusion that looking at it, and as you rightly said, months to deal with that issue. And so what it means then is that we were calling on the government to do follow some procedures which you rightly read from the Constitution. And so that is what it is about. And state of emergency is not declared necessarily over the whole country for it to work. It can be limited to particular areas where
yes, the Constitution says so.
About exists. Yes. So in this case, the call for the declaration is not countrywide, but only the Galamsey Ravi.
Okay, Prof, your line is disappointing us a bit. I don't know what we can do about that immediately, because I need you to take us to what exactly that means, what goes into it. No, Prof's line, we need to get Prof back. His line is not helpful at this point. So, Felicity, having listened to the two, experts we spoke to earlier, three of them, I saw you taking notes. There was a point I heard you say, Jesus. What was going on in your head?
I think it was the 300 years, actually.
Yeah, right.
When he said it's going to take 300 years to restore the water, and I just thought, this is crazy. 300 years, and we haven't even started. I think that's what's so unsettling and so scary for me. It's the fact that if we have 300 years and we haven't even started, and we're still kind of pussyfooting around the issue, and we're going in, like we're burning excavators.
Right.
And it's like, it's very common where we do this bravado thing, which is seemingly even thoughtless, and it doesn't actually address anything, because you go in and burn an excavator, what does that prove? Like you're throwing the army in, burning excavators, what does that solve?
It's a war zone.
Yeah, and
particularly the
craziest thing is
the Shamfines are sitting on the water bodies.
We need excavators for our roads, but there's so much work we need. So like, it's just such a senseless act to go in and burn.
For now, they've burned just one of that. Let's talk about Shamfines. They counted in excess of 18 of them sitting on the Brim River.
Yeah.
What did that tell you? Was that a revelation to you when we were told that the fight is on, everything is going on, being done, and so on and so forth, and alerts were coming about the Brim River, very important river, being polluted to the extent that it was? How did it feel to hear that as many as about 20 Shamfans were sitting on that river with other mining machines?
It doesn't come as a surprise to me. I think that, we love to do a lot of PR with these things, and we kind of say the right things, but the reality on the ground is not reflective.
It should come as a surprise to you.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
That we have had a Galam Stop, Vanguard, Halt, and they are all...
I haven't seen any real decisive action being taken. I haven't. I think that we're using all these words, and we have all these task force, and it's less like all of that is part of the PR game to like look like we're doing something or actively doing nothing. Because if whilst we're saying, oh, there's this whole hullabaloo about Galamsey and we want to address it, and whilst protests are going on about Galamsey, and on those days people are being granted new licenses, like it's incongruent. Like it doesn't sit with me. It's inconsistent with you're like, oh, we're trying to fight, we're trying to address it. At the moment, we haven't got a handle on things. So if for anything at all, there needs to be a halt when it comes to like issuing new licenses.
Okay, so let me get Prof. Appiagyei back. Let's see. Hello, Prof. Let's check if your mic is helpful at this time. Hello, Prof. We're trying to get Prof back.
Hello.
Hi, Prof. Are you there?
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me?
The line is quite faint.
Can you hear me, Prof?
I can hear you, but it's very faint.
Okay, so I just did something rough. I have an idea what a state of emergency involves and the things that it will be in it, but I just went to my basic AI, and I asked AI to tell me when a state of emergency is declared to fight organized crime, and you have said this is organized crime. When a state of emergency is declared to fight organized crime, I'm asking what typically happens. And it tells me that the initial period will be some 72 hours. That's just like our constitution. He says there will be deployment of security forces, military, police, and specialized units are deployed to affected areas. There will be curfews and restrictions. Movement and gatherings may be limited to prevent crime and maintain public safety. There will be increased surveillance, enhanced monitoring of suspected criminal activity, that will be Galamsey, including wiretaps and surveillance. There will be raids and arrests. People are asking me today, we know where the Shamfines are manufactured. Shamfines are manufactured for only one purpose, not dual purpose. So the manufacturers who are in town and have shops by the roadside, what is happening to them? It says there will be targeted operations to apprehend key figures and disrupt criminal activity and network. We know that it is the boys who are picked by the roadside and who don't have jobs, who go to do these things. They are even not paid well, but the big guns are never arrested. And we know, we have been told, at least, Haji Halima Mahama told us in 2018, is it, that the DCEs and whatever MPs are involved. People within this government have told us that their own people are involved. What is happening? That there will be establishment of emergency response centers, coordination hubs, among others. Enhanced arrest, detention powers, security will get that, and so on and so forth. They will have powers to search and seize, and without going through the processes that they would have gone through if there's no state of emergency. Now, hello, Prof. Let me try again.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. What happens when a state of emergency is declared? What difference will it bring to the fight?
Thank you. Yes, I think the difference it will bring to the fight, and you rightly mentioned what will happen when a state of emergency is declared. The declaration of a curfew, enhanced surveillance, and so on, which are all going to limit the enjoyment of certain rights, which, as I said, forms part of the process of declaring a state of emergency, or when a state of emergency is in place. Now, these measures are supposed to, first of all, target to enable the government to identify those engaging in legal mining, whether small scale or big scale, and then those who are doing the Galamsey, so that when that mapping is done and they're able to identify who is doing what. Because the thing is that some mining companies doing legal mining are also doing illegal mining activities, and some are involving these Galamseyers to do some of the dirty job for them as well. So we need to be able to make sure that you identify those engaged in proper mining, legal mining activities, and those who are not.
Okay.
And that is part of the emergency measures, which will ensure that we are able to, having identified where these hotspots are or the red zones are, then we can, the police, with the support of the army, can go to these spots and make sure that the people are arrested and the necessary stringent measures are put in place.
In a minute, tell me,
these
Prof,
practices.
Prof, in a minute, tell me why you think the government is hesitant in declaring a state of emergency, which runs through the calls and the demands by many organizations that issued a statement. We had over 50 groups issuing statements.
The Galamsey practice.
Yes, go ahead.
The government is hesitant to do so because the Galamsey practice is backed by, or it involves, campaign financiers. We are in the campaign season at this time, and at this moment, the campaign financiers are moving from one political party to the other, especially the NDC and MPP, and negotiating and renegotiating and doing horse trading with them. So the fear is that if they lose the backing of these financiers, they are going to lose in the elections. It is not so much about the Galamseyers, the small boys and those some of these
small fishes,
ladies working in the pits. They don't have much power in terms of even how many votes they have. But it's the political financiers that are really engineering this hesitancy on the part of government to attack the issue as we want the government to attack it through the position of the state of emergency, because they are afraid that they will lose the support of these financiers.
Okay.
And this is where it becomes a transnational organized crime.
Okay. The organized labor,
some of these financiers are outside the country.
Okay. Organized
and the
labor
thing has become networked and connected in such a way that they are not able to control them. And so Galamsey is a means for these financiers to reap back some of the profit or the money they put into financing these political parties. That is why on both sides, both the NPP and NDC, they are unwilling to commit to the Galamsey fight. So in my view, all that they have done so far, the government trying to ramp up attacks and so on, is just mere
Prof, I have a final question. I have a final question for you. Can you hear me, Prof? Hello, Prof.
We are not going to reap the benefits.
Hello, Prof.
But through the state of emergency, and we make them to sign that pact, which I think will be binding legally, then we can make a headway. Otherwise, if we sit and the elections are held, and these campaign financiers are able to have their way to finance these political parties, and they come to power,
whichever of them comes in power, they will have to make sure that they pay back. And they are going to pay back through taking Galamsey to a higher level.
Thank you.
We'll move from being
Thank you, Professor Kojo Appiah is a professor at the University of Ghana School of Law, and he was trying to give us good education on state of emergency declaration and why it is important. It was the first demand by organized labor. It has not been met. The organized labor feels a little okay, so it is going ahead. It is suspended its strike. Organized labor affiliated at the time with TUC, with UTAC. UTAC have broken away, and they say we'll continue with our strike until government declares a state of emergency. The Accra Catholic, prayer walk, the statement they issued or the petition they sent to the presidency also has the same demand. And I read here, it says that immediate and decisive action by government. We urge government to swiftly is in caps, is boldened, to swiftly employ all available means to immediately halt illegal mining activities. This means that the problem is stated clearly and unambiguously as a social, economic, and national security issue. Thus articulated, it must engender actions such as the declaration of a state of emergency in relation to Galamsey, triggering a moratorium on issuing mining licenses, repealing of LI 2462, which allows mining in forest reserves, enforcing existing laws and holding perpetrators accountable, etc. Let me bring on, at this point, I've got Janet. Janet, you hold on briefly for me. Dr. Alexander Enim-Mensah, you hold on. Chemical engineer, you hold on briefly for me. We also have Kwabena Adair-Sapong, who is a graduate research assistant and PhD candidate, Washington State University, Crop and Soil Sciences. I think, Kwabena, you should come in here and tell us what you find similar or you may disagree with as far as the CSIR, Soil Science Research Institute research shows. Dr. Adair-Sapong, please unmute your mic. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Great. I said Dr. Adair-Sapong. That's a prophecy that you have finished the PhD already. Thank God. Yeah. So you heard your colleague, soil science researcher at the CSIR, saying the things he said. We have gone past danger zone in the manner in which we have completely poisoned the soil. What do you say?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say hello to your listeners and viewers, and thank you for having me on this show. So yes, I do agree with what my colleagues said. For me, when I see the videos, I'm heartbroken because I'm in the ag sector and I work with a lot of soils, and I know how this menace is affecting the soils. So aside the heavy metals that we are having in the soils, it's also going to take a very long time to build a topsoil that we could use for agriculture. In fact, as you said, it takes like centuries. It would take centuries to clean up the soil. Similarly, it would take potentially centuries to build the topsoil for agriculture. And apparently I have a textbook here which says it takes about 100 years to just build 10 millimeters of topsoil. So
100 years?
Yes, 100 years.
I've got others of your colleagues who have sent me messages to confirm that the 30-year period the 300-year period for restoration is more accurate than those who have predicted 50 years for restoring, resetting the ecosystem to its original status. So please go ahead and let's hear you.
Yeah, so as I said, aside the heavy metals that we are worried about, there's also the issue of the topsoil forming again, and this takes 100 years for just 10 millimeters. So, and when you are growing something like yam, you can imagine how deep you want the topsoil to be for your tubers to form. So this is really a serious issue that we should be concerned with. And for the solution, it's very dicey because I read somewhere, I think an article by a study done by one researcher in Ghana says like 3 million people are involved in Galamsey, with about 1 million getting their daily livelihood from that. So you can imagine the pressure that this probably has on government. But I agree with what my colleague Roslyn said in terms of, addressing this Galamsey issue, and that's having stringent regulation and enforcement of the law. For instance, I believe there are so many Galamsey sites, and you can't have like 10 or thousands of sites and probably having just 50 people on the ground or 100 people on the ground monitoring all these areas. Is just not possible. Probably need a whole lot more people, probably employ some drone technology if possible. And then also community engagement, because I believe if you get engaged with the community and they become aware of the consequences, not just the people are probably more focused on the short-term gain, they get some money, but then they are not looking at the long-term goals. We have to educate them on that. When you wake up in the morning, you don't think about your gold, think about the food you eat. These heavy metals will find their way in our food, find their way in our fishes, our water. We consume all these things, you have kidney failure and all sorts of diseases. So I believe we have to engage the communities for them to understand the menace that we are trying to tackle. And then I believe, as I've already talked about, regulation and having people to really enforce, having a lot of people on the ground, having community engagement, and also in the issuance of the licensing, I believe it's probably too much. There's only so much the environment can withstand. The forest is kind of like a natural buffer. So if we are having so many mining sites per square kilometer, it just overwhelms the environment. It doesn't give it the chance to naturally, clean these pollutants. And one thing too, we are not realizing, people may be like, you are far away or whatever, but these heavy metals can also find their way in the groundwater if there's any groundwater system in there. And then you don't know the extent to which the groundwater is. So it could be kilometers away, but then you also be ingesting heavy metals. And I believe maybe my other colleagues who are more versed with hydrological cycles could probably comment on that. So these are just a few takeaways. And I don't know if there's any other thing you want me to add.
In saying what you have to say, you have incorporated what we have to do. Please isolate what we have to do and restate it for us briefly in the next minute.
Okay, what we have to do. First of all, I think the enforcement should be, listen, we should have a lot of people on the ground who are going to these mining areas, who are, like, they should set stringent regulations. Educate them on the impact on the environment. I believe most of these people are not educated on remediation or the effect of what they are doing on the environment or contamination levels.
They say poverty and gold cannot coexist. You don't want the gold to be there. The person has a house, some mud thatch house he's living in, and there's gold beneath that. He has seen the other neighbor who has built, you know, a nice, beautiful thing. So you can't expect them not to mind. So it is not that they don't know. They do know. They do know the consequences.
Yeah, then in that case, we just have to
And the
really
stringent laws are there. The laws are there. We don't lack the laws. We have the best of the laws.
Yeah. So the laws goes with the enforcement. Like where I am, the laws goes with enforcement. I could just give you a simple example. It's not related to mine.
Okay, do that. Do that in the next minute. Thank you.
I'm in the US. If you get to a stop sign, you have to stop. Like if you get to like what we call like a cross junction or something like a four-way stop, you have to stop, even if there's no car passing. If you pass by and the cops sees you, they are going to fine you or you get a ticket or whatever. That one is unforgivable. In Ghana, you could, how do I say, find your way out of that situation easily.
Yeah, you just need to talk to the police officer. Today, give him some 50 Ghana or 100 Ghana. You are sorted.
Yes,
because the reason the Ghanaian, you know, in that vehicle will also do that is that if there's no ticketing system, so he has to be taken to court. He will be taken to court and he will waste precious dollar hours sitting in the courtroom. He will sit in the court from morning till 2. His case will not be called. He will be told it has been adjourned to the next day. The next day he will show up in court again. A zoning policy that says you cannot build maybe, you know, a 3-story in this area. You have a zoning policy that says this place is not a mixed place, so it's only residential. And yet you see the next how many churches within the same place. You see markets springing up within that residential area. The next day, people don't want that place again. They move away, go to other places if they can afford. You know, meanwhile, those giving all the licenses for these things, they are sitting in there. They are working for the state. We are talking about Galamsey, okay? There is a law, an LI. It was passed as late as 2022 or so, or 2020. The heavy moving machines, like the excavators, they are supposed to be tracked. And people are paying for that. So that every machine that moves will be traced. It will be wherever it is, it will be known. Here we are. These trucks, they move from Accra and they find themselves all over the place, and we see hundreds within one community. Dr. Tia Champong, you have been on this discussion for a long time enough. Having heard your colleagues earlier and the discussion over the weeks, let's go for the jugular. What is not happening? What should happen?
Yeah, Samson, good morning. And I'm glad you said we've been at this discussion for several years. And it's good to see at least other new voices also trying to re-echo some of the points that we've been making for a while now. The point fundamentally is, you know, we have a collective failure here as the people, right? And let me actually give some context to all of this conversation here. So if you actually look at some of the data and the statistics, about 40% of Ghana's total gold output comes from these small-scale mines, right? And when you look at the small-scale mines themselves, around about 70%, so basically 7 in 10 of them are not licensed. So probably only about, you know, a third are licensed, and even those that are licensed, we don't know whether they're doing things like properly, because some of them would get a license and still do the tampons and all the other things that we're talking about in terms of destroying, you know, the water bodies. And then when you look at the data on the gold exports, so forget about the Ghana export data, but look at data from places like UAE, Dubai, and those other places. And it tells you very clearly, right, that, for example, the illegal gold that is leaving Ghana, more or less is about $2 to $2.5 billion. So we're dealing with the size of an industry that is almost worth as much as the cocoa sector brings to us, or as much as the oil sector brings to us 2 years in a row. And what that fundamentally means is that you can't just send 100 soldiers into the bush to more or less fight it, because it's not going to work. It's like dealing with, organized crime, the people that push cocaine, the people that push, all these things there. They are armed. There are people funding it. And so the response side solution to it is got to be radically different. And I'll come to talk about that in a moment. But the point is that the Galamsey, for me, and I like to make this very clearly, is one of the major policy failures of this current administration. And why I say that is, you can go back. The president even put his own presidency on the line over this, isn't it? There's a Twitter post you can check on the president's own page, 6:29 p.m., July 11, 2017. And it goes down and says, I am prepared to put my presidency on the line in the fight against Galamsey. And we saw some successes in the early days of the administration. Remember when John Amewu was the minister, and they were doing some raids here and there, and we saw, right, the waters relatively getting, cleaner.
That's right.
And then we went back to sleep, right? We all went back to sleep again. But part of the thing is that the Galamsey issues, and I think Rosalie mentioned this, it is tied also to the price of gold on the global market, right? You can do a search of the time Galamsey issues come up versus the gold price, and you see a strong correlation, right? Where, for example, this year alone, because gold prices on the global market is actually up 30% as compared to last year, everybody wants to get into a piece of the action. And even the production data coming from the small-scale mining sector in Ghana, there's a report on Reuters this morning that says that small-scale mines could produce 1.2 million ounces of gold in the first 7 years of the months of this year alone, first 7 months of this year alone. And this is more than all of 2023 production combined, because the gold price is up.
And,
right?
and that should also remind you, Doc, sorry for this intervention. The year when we put a moratorium on small-scale mining, and we said no small-scale mining until further notice, the period when there was that moratorium is the period we saw the highest export of gold by small-scale mining. That tells a story.
Absolutely, it does. And there's both the illegal and legal aspects of those export statistics. But fundamentally, we're dealing with a major poly crisis. The other experts on here have talked about the health dimension, the environmental dimension. There's even a national security dimension. So look at what happened in places like the Niger Delta, and people, right, eventually arming themselves. You go to some of these mine sites, don't you see people holding Kalashnikovs and other relatively heavy weaponry? And to the point that if some of these locals suddenly feel that they have no other alternative, because you tell them to go and farm cocoa or do palm, and they'll tell you it's too complicated, too long. They can't wait 5 years for the cocoa to grow before you start, harvesting them. It's actually breeding a crisis on our hands. And for me, the health and the other things people have talked about, but we've got a major national security issue on our hands that we're dealing with. And it is not just an economic problem. We're dealing with a national security problem. And you know the movie Blood Diamonds, right? One of the famous movies. You watch that movie, you look at the analogy and the things that happen, and you fundamentally have to take a radically different approach to what we've been doing currently in terms of addressing it. So my solutions are actually twofold, right? You have the supply side response and then the demand side response. So in terms of the supply side response, and others have talked about this, the the formalization issues that have to be addressed. We've done bits of it, and in fact, there is nothing new under the sun. There's actually a document that the World Bank and others funded for Ghana, and it's in public domain. The title of the document is the Multilateral Mining Integrated Project, MMIP, Project Appraisal and Implementation Document for, and it is dated June 2017. In that document, you have all the solutions, at least from the supply side, that we need to do to try and address the issue of Galamsey. So let me pick a few just to highlight the point. But what I'm trying to say is that there is nothing new under the sun. Right. Perhaps where we need to push a little bit more on, and which I'll talk about in my concluding remark, is also on the demand side. Right. Because if there's no buyers for the gold, and then these people would not be mining it.
If you can list the solutions suggested that you're about to, just list them and conclude for us.
Okay. So on the supply side, first thing that we need to do for me is the immediate temporary ban on the issuance of licenses. It is not the same as declaring a state of emergency, because I don't think that will happen for other political reasons. But at least for the next 2 years or 1.5 years, let's just put a ban, right?
All right.
On it giving out any new licenses. Let's leverage technology to enforce some of the regulatory work that we're doing, including the drones and things that are happening.
Thank you.
People have talked about land reclamation, but importantly, let me quickly just highlight this point on the demand side, which is really, 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 really important, right? So when you're buying diamonds anywhere in this world, you need a certificate, right, for that. And the reason why was because we wanted to prevent the issue of conflict diamonds getting into the supply chain. So you had the whole Kimberley supply chain process and things, right, around that. And you have had other companies, Amnesty International and others, even suing these big multinationals in the past for using conflict cobalt and other minerals in their supply chain processes. What I'm trying to say is that Ghana, or collectively, our supply side response would not fully address the problem if you don't have an equivalent international coordinated demand side response to it, where you actually are using, for example, blockchain, you're using other technologies to ensure that if I am selling or buying gold in Dubai or in India or some other place like that, you can actually trace where that gold is coming from. Right. And you can have a certificate that then authorizes or gives you that assurance within that context. So I think that instead of a Kimberley process, let's maybe work out a Dunkwa process. Let's work out or come up with something, a TAQUA process that allows us to have, that international demand side response to it. Other than that, all the supply things we're talking is just going to be a trickle in the ocean.
Thank you very much. And as you take leave of us, in 30 seconds, tell us where you stand. The first demand, the preeminent demand by almost all the 50 organizations that have issued statements coming together under organized labor also, and even the Accra Diocese of the Catholic Church, is declaration of a state of emergency, moratorium, which you have just spoken about, moratorium on issuance of licenses on small-scale mining. Should there be a declaration of state of emergency? 30 seconds. Do you support it?
No, I don't support that. A moratorium, yes, but state of emergency with 8 weeks to go to an election, it just doesn't wash.
Okay. State of emergency, remember, is on the river bodies and the forest reserve. Now, let me go to Rosalind. Rosalind, in 30 seconds. State of emergency on the river bodies and forest reserve. Do you support it?
I don't know. I don't support it because I don't see how effective it would be. So.
Thank you. Dr. Bright, Boafo Boama, medical doctor and toxicologist. What do you say?
I also don't support it. I think it's quite dicey. Looking at the time period, I think it may bring up unforeseen circumstances we're not prepared for. So no, I do not agree with it.
Thank you very much. Dr. Albert Kobina Mensah, research scientist, CSIR. What do you say?
For me, I don't really support the moratorium, but of course, if you want to go about that, there should be a process. One of the process or one of the strategy is to sort of get the people who are doing the illegal business, get them and register their operations, and also give them some alternative livelihood programs that they may be able to leverage on. And when I talk about the alternative livelihood program, I don't mean planting of vegetables or maybe planting of maize or other cereal crops. An alternative livelihood program that commensurate with how much they were earning when should they choose the mining.
All right.
So that it can become constitute enough to deter them from engaging in the illegality.
Thank you very much. Kwabna Desapong.
Yeah, hello. I do not agree just because I feel it's just a 2-day show. I think we should find lasting solutions rather than just this 1 week or whatever moratorium we are discussing.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take a break here. And when we return, remember I had introduced Frank. Edu Jr., retired banker and member of the Ghana Coalition Against Galamsey. Also, Yao Nsako, you know him, speaks bluntly, has Ghana right at the center of his heart. He is also a member of that coalition. They have started the Red Band campaign. Felicity here is with the Democracy Hub. She's a social justice activist, and she is doing the Red Band campaign hot. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. Now, I have Janet and Alexander, who are also both engineers, chemical engineer and metallurgical engineer, going to assist us further by some 5 minutes each of an input. But before I do that, let's try this. Frank Edu Jr., retired banker and member of the Ghana Coalition Against Galamsey. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Samson. Good morning, everybody.
Great. Your coalition issued a statement and said what has been promised or the assurance that has been given leading to organized labor calling off the strike is not sufficient. How so? Soldiers have been unleashed. They went to the first spot, the Birim River, that we're all complaining about, having seen how muddy it had become. 18 Shamfans were sitting on it. They have bent all of them. So the action has started.
Yes. Good morning to your listeners. I think that I'm even more resolved in my belief, having listened to the experts who have spoken earlier about the damage that has been caused and how long it's going to take for this damage to be repaired, the problems associated with it, medical problems, social problems, economic problems, etc. And therefore, for me, whilst I've always fought against Galamsey for the past 10 years, for me right now, I see it as an outright war declared on the people of Ghana. Because this activity, this illegal, mindless activity, It's wreaking havoc on us. It's genocide. You know, forget that it's ecocide, but this is genocide, calculated genocide to benefit a few pockets. So I think that whatever it is that we're doing now, Provision Galam halt or whatever it is, eat champagnes, it's not enough. It's simply not enough. I think, to be blunt, the gloves have to come off. This has to be a bare knuckle fight. Forgive the dog-tired or cliche phrase of existentialism, but our very existence is at risk here. People are ingesting cyanide. They are ingesting arsenic. They don't even know that. You see, that's the thing. And we cannot sit there and let that happen, particularly since we know. And so our coalition is very clear that whatever is happening or whatever solutions government has proffered, it's not enough. It's happened before. As you said, and I mean, the rivers were clean, but that's just the color. How about the contamination, the metal contamination? So the gloves have to come up. We've got to tackle this thing head on. Yes, it has to be community based. There's 3-4 million people, one way or the other, involved with this. But there are 31 million lives at stake. You know, so how do we go about it? I think that I listened to those who have said the state of emergency is a short-term measure, or because of the timing of it and the elections. We are not asking for a state of emergency to be declared across the whole country. No, in those Galamsey areas, so that if it's whatever measure that follows with the state of emergency, the president is now possessed with powers that allow him to act in a manner where we can attack this canker frontally. Furthermore, I also believe that we've gotten to the point where there should be no sacred cows. We all know that those boys, look, I had a friend in the political circles who went around the country into the Galamsey areas. And according to him, what these boys are saying is that if you gave us a job, which would assure us of a minimum of 2,000 CVs a month, we would stop Galamsey. Okay? They don't like it. They are forced to do it. But as little as 2,000 CVs a month, they would stop Galamsey. So clearly, the people behind who are making the $400,000, $500,000 a month are hidden. And those are the people we must find. I'm sure we can find them, but here, this is what it is. This is where the political class has failed us. This is where leadership has failed us, because we would all know who they are. And if we went for those people in the political offices, in the regulatory institutions, etc., and we went straight for them, we would make a huge dent in this operation. I listened to AEC yesterday. I was disheartened. This is a fellow who sits on TV every Thursday and talks to Randy Abbey as the Minerals Commission boss. And clearly, yesterday, I lost a whole lot of respect for this fellow. You know? And I cannot but think that people like him, and I have to call him out, and others in these regulatory powerful positions are complicit in this dastardly act that is taking place and killing all of us. These are my initial comments.
And you will have to explain what you mean by complicit before I get a suit from them.
Yeah, well, complicit in the sense that they are not doing their job. Not in the sense that
he says, that's the truth, isn't it? He says that, well, we have seen Galamsey going on here, we have seen it going on here. Our job is that we simply report to the police. Beyond that, we don't have police powers. And that is the fact, isn't it?
Well, you know, that may be the fact. But why issue so many licenses? You understand me?
Issuing licenses, he says, is one of the ways to avoid the illegality. Because if you don't give them a license, they will go and mine illegally anyway.
Samson, you know, I think it's just a very lame excuse or reason or explanation. You understand me? Because we all know that there is, like we said, there is no monitoring. If you will not enforce the law, there's no enforcement. If you will not enforce, when was the last time the Minerals Commission or the EPA went out there to make sure that even those small-scale mines, which have been given licenses, are doing reclamation?
Well, they say they are doing it. Let me bring in Yao Nsako and people like you to find that you are stepping up in this way and getting into the public discourse, which is something you normally will not do. We know you to be, forgive me to say, fine middle class, reputed for your expertise in your areas and doing very well. And then because of Galamsey, we are seeing you on coalitions, speaking to the whole nation. Yao, thank you very much. In your statement by the coalition, you actually list the demands that were not met, declaration of a state of emergency, and so on and so forth, complete cessation of mining in forest reserve and water bodies. What at all do you want beyond these measures that we have seen that the president has started to take?
Well, thank you, Samson. I think Frank has touched on most of the issues. But to answer your question very directly, and it's a very good question, because there's a danger that we get focused on intermediate steps. And there are debates about this specific measure or that specific measure. The concern that is being put forward, not just by the coalition, but by all the people that have spoken, is that we solve this problem. That's what we are focused on. Now, if you look at the commitments that have been made by the government, yeah, okay, you cannot dismiss them totally, but you have listened to all the experts, the toxicologists and the engineers and so on and so forth, who know the mining industry inside out, and you can tell the scale of danger that we are facing. The point, therefore, that is being made by the coalition is that these measures that have been taken now, pleasing as they may be in the sense of signaling that there's some seriousness now being applied to it, are grossly insufficient. Just because you burn 18 shanfans doesn't mean that you clean a damaged environment. This problem, if the people, the citizens themselves, are not mobilized to participate. And what the coalition is doing is saying everybody needs to play their role. But you need to keep the awareness of the problem high and with the people themselves, the citizens. They must come together to be able to resolve this issue. Otherwise, what will happen is that there's some grandstanding. 18 shanfans are burnt, maybe 7 more are added, it becomes 25. You send 20 soldiers, send out some videos that some burning has been done, and everybody goes to sleep. But the awareness and tension around the campaign must be kept, because we are not talking about a minor inconvenience. We are talking about long-term, severe ecological damage. And we must respond with a degree of intensity that we've not seen before. This is where the conversation about radical measures, I don't want us to get into a dispute about state of emergency. There is nobody who has been on this show who will not agree that the most radical and intensive measures that can be accommodated in our legal context need to be applied. So some people may not like the phrasing, state of emergency, but they don't disagree that this is not a thing to deal with kids' gloves. You will not be able to solve the problem.
Like Professor Apiejetu has said, state of emergency in some circumstances, suspends people's human rights. Isn't that too much to resort to?
It's a very narrow view of human rights to say that you are suspending human rights when you are securing the long-term health of society. Some people, and I don't have the time to get into it all, but we sometimes have welcomed this thing that human rights must always be individual. That's not true. You must first secure society before individual human rights can be expressed. And what we are facing right now is a major threat to the long-term health of the society. I know Frank said it's become a cliche. It's a cliche because nobody even argues anymore when you say this is an existential threat. We all see it. So in such circumstances, that's not when you come and say that you have the freedom to walk around 24 hours. The state must intervene and take the actions that are necessary to secure. Let's not get too fine about discussing rights in this matter.
People are angry, and some very respectable individuals have said we should even go as far as shoot to kill. You have heard a former deputy speaker of parliament say that. I have had judges say that to me privately. If you declare a state of emergency, it means you are actually opening that kind of window where the soldiers will go in there and, among others, they will shoot to kill, and the law will not apply.
That's not true. That's a gross exaggeration by people who don't want action to be taken. Or to declare a state of emergency does not mean that you now lift the lid and allow a tremendous amount of chaos in the country. No, it means certain specific powers of the state will systematically be deployed, but with urgency and the needed intensity to solve the issue. So those who are coming over the top and saying people are going to go around and start shooting to kill and so on, nobody is pushing for that we return to the state of nature. No, that's not what this is about at all. I just very quickly, the one thing that I feel we've not touched on enough is because this problem is a lot of the time comes down to there are many poor people, they don't have jobs, etc.
Right.
I want to make the point again. Galamsey could not have been sustained by peasants. Let's be absolutely clear about this. So I don't take away the fact that large-scale poverty in the country is a driver because it gives a supply line for people to be recruited into these issues. But when you step back, you're talking about the burning of shamfans, the large-scale importation of chemicals. You are talking about industrial organization. And we know that that is not being done by the peasants.
Mm-hmm.
We also know that the reason why a lot of the influential names that have come up are untouched is because they are financiers of the political structure that we are running in the country. So I do not say that we must not address the economic deprivation. We must. But let us not hide the fact that they are influential people. And when you talk about Galamsey, it touches on sensitive doorsteps. This is why you then have the discussion come and say, oh, we started to take action, we did a lot, but we lost elections in 5 constituencies. That is not our problem. An entire country is at risk, its long-term health is at risk, and you say you lost an election. And in any case, when you go for an election, it is your responsibility to educate the people, to put the issues before them. If you don't do that and you lose, that's not the reason why 31 million or 32 million Ghanaians must be buried. So I just wanted to explore that very quickly because that is beginning to gain in current.
Thank you, Yaw Nsako. And let me do this. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so Frank Adu, you are coming in, but I wanted you to give us the mechanics of the Red Band campaign so that people who can join, who want to join, can join in the course of the week. But make that point quick.
Okay, so the point I want to make is very quickly this, that the people engaged in Galamsey are purposefully and purposely inflicting death on us. You understand me? They know by now that their actions will lead to our eventual extermination as a people. So what is wrong with shooting them on sight if we have to? If somebody enters my house with the intention of killing me, I guarantee you, once I know that, I will kill him first.
Of course, you are allowed by the law to do so, because that will be in self-defense.
Exactly. These people, they know their actions will kill us. And yet, for gold, they are prepared to do so.
In fact, state security has gone to one site, a minister tells us, and they were overpowered. They had to decide to run away because they saw the Galamseyers were more than they were and they had more weapons than they had. Which street boys will be called to do a job that they are paid less than, you know, 2,000 a month, have money to amass weapons? That's the question. Please lay out the red band. How can anybody join?
So it's a very, very simple, we believe, but a very powerful silent message. All you do is that between now and ad infinitum, in perpetuity, until we get government to act, we're saying wear a red band, wear a red shirt, wear a red cap, wear a red scarf, tie a red band on your car, wherever you go. We are not saying anything, we are not going to the streets, but I think the sheer force of that, as the numbers grow, government will realize that, wait a minute, it's the people who are pushing for this, you know.
And until you get government to act means a state of emergency declared and clear concrete measures to sustain the revival of these dead water bodies and forests.
Absolutely. And they must know, the politicians must know, that they must now backtrack and stop thinking about themselves first, their party second, and if you are lucky, the country third.
Thank you.
It is the country first.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. But the president has said that, of course, I've heard Franklin Douglas and others use that particular statement or phrase, that he believes in the next generation and not the next election. What do you say to that statement, briefly? The president has said, when he was campaigning to be elected president, that he believes in the next generation and not the next election. You take that with a pinch of salt?
I'm laughing. When they've allowed people to acquire arms, you have to ask, how did they get the arms?
Right.
How did the arms get into the country?
You don't have to be a security expert to say what you just said, Felicity. And they are telling us, and they ask us the questions. Ask yourself, how do they get the stash of arms?
Yes.
Janet Efua Akwa, metallurgical engineer, and Dr. Alexander Enim Mensah, chemical engineer and president, I2I Mega Hub. The two of you, let's quickly reflect on what we have heard so far and what needs to be stressed before I go to my next break and return to Felicity. Yes, so let's begin with Janet.
Much for this opportunity. I think one thing that I would like to begin with is the fact that Galamsey affects everyone, right? Galamsey doesn't affect just Ghanaians or Ghanaians in the mining industry or Ghanaians that are around those. One thing that we pointed out is the fact that the minerals that they are mining or the heavy metals they are mining seeps into our soils, right? And these soils are used to grow diverse crops that are exported. Because, like, I'm in the US right now, and then someone will think that, like, I do not really have any concern with Galamsey, but I do. I know that from statistics, Ghana is like the second exporter of cocoa currently. And so you should ask yourself that, like, these things that we are exporting, right? How good are they for us, right? So I just want to reiterate the fact that it doesn't just affect the people around the mines, right? It affects every single one, not just in Ghana, but in the whole wide world. Because the things that we grow back in Ghana, some of them are exported back here. We export things like mango, we export things like cashew, we export yam and other things, and it ends up coming back to us. So Galamsey affects each and every single one of us. And also one thing that I would just like to add, so like in the US, we have like different acts that governs mining. I worked in the mining industry for over 2 years. Well, I worked for Nevada Gold Mines back in the day, and then we have like different acts that regulate us, right? So we have like the Clean Water Act, we have the Clean Air Act, we have Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, we have Endangered Species Act, right? So like when I was in the mines, you couldn't, if you are working and you see like a snake or you see something, you're not just allowed to kill it. You're supposed to call environmental to come and migrate it, right? But then one thing that Ghanaians are doing is they are tearing down our natural resources and they are endangering like all these species. And just as it's been mentioned earlier, it takes about 100 years for us to be able to grow just a small amount of the topsoil. So it's gonna take like infinity to restore our natural resources back to its natural state.
Right.
And there are things, so there are certain things that I believe that we could do in helping enforce the law against Galamsey. We need like good laws. So in the US, right, if you are going to mine, you need an EIA, right? You need an environmental impact assessment. You have to evaluate the land and you have to put things in place before you can even start mining. You have to make sure that you have to have a plan for reclamation and reforestation. You have to have a mitigation plan and make sure that when you are mining, it will not seep into our waters or soil or anything. So Ghana has to come together with rules and regulations that are going to be strongly enforced to help us to be able to curb this. And I feel like one thing that we like about this program is that we are educating people about the effects of Galamsey. We are educating different people about what it really looks like in the future, not just on our children, but also on us right now, because there are people being born right now with defects. There are people suffering from, people dying. I know like there have been tons and thousands of people who have lost their lives because of this. At the end of the month, speaking about $2,000, and then you are killing someone. So we have to come up with sustainable ways to mitigate this effect of Galamsey.
Thank you, Janet. Let me bring in Dr. Alexander Enim Mensah, chemical engineer. Janet is telling us practically what we already have. Look, in Ghana, when we are making some of these laws, we don't, it's not rocket science. We simply go to where the best examples, we take their laws, and if it is Michigan that is there, we just remove it and put Ghana over there. Yeah, that's it. And we are done. And yet, our problem, we know, boils down to lack of enforcement because of all the interests that have been mentioned. What do you see to be that bullet that we need?
I think we've all drawn enough awareness to this. And then this is more like a chicken in an egg or an egg in a chicken issue. You know, as we are solving it, there are other things we also have to put in perspective. For me, I'm in support of state of emergency. That state of emergency is just making a statement such a way that if people are even not aware, they are not on the same realization, collectively, that's going to make a statement such a way that all Ghanaians will all be on the same page and say that enough is enough. I will cite a simple example. I mean, I know the impacts are many, but they all boil down to economic impact. Imagine now, people are cutting their cocoa to do what? Gold mining, right? Those cocoa are renewable source of income. And then the gold itself is not renewable. Once you mine them, they are gone. So if this is actually going to affect Ghana in the long run, in the sense that the production levels are going to go down, and then the quality, as Janet mentioned, cocoa quality itself, with this cocoa infiltrating into it, with these chemicals infiltrating into our system. Sorry.
Don't worry. That's okay. That's okay.
Yes. With these chemicals infiltrating into our plants, right? The food that we export to the African market, to the giant markets, they are all going to be contaminated. So at the end of the day, they are all not going to be what? Worthy of export. Also, the cocoa, which is the backbone of Ghana, now with the chemicals, people might put a ban on it and say that we are not going to export cocoa. Or if you're going to import cocoa, what is going to happen? The costs have to be lower such a way that they can blend with that of Ivory Coast and the rest.
And then we shall be doomed.
About, you know, imagine people have taken water which is contaminated, right? Their health is going to be impacted. So you need able men to work for Ghana. You might not have them because people are sick. People are afraid to drink the water because the water is also contaminated. We talk about tourism in Ghana. The tourism itself people coming to a place that they felt like they have going to have an association with nature. Now the water is contaminated, the food is contaminated. You know, what is going to happen? Nobody want to come. Another thing is going to be in terms of you think you are coming to Ghana to eat very good food, only to realize that you are going to a place that is going to be an issue. Look at the rise in the kidney issues. Look at the rise in all the issues, you know. So the impact itself, if you look at it, I'm in support of.
A perfect point for you to pause. Thank you, Dr. Alexander Enim-Mensah, chemical engineer and president of I2I Mega Hub, and Janet Efuapokua Aqua, metallurgical engineer. Thank you also very much. We don't have too much time, but thank you so very much. We'll take a break. We'll return. I'll touch base with the lady who has now secured her freedom, and some 52 others who have secured their freedom after they went on a demonstration about this same issue, and some excesses occurred. But we know that some people were arrested when they were just passers-by. Some were arrested from the hospital and so on and so forth. Then we have some 15 or at the least 10 minutes to canvass the question of who is responsible for the delay in resolving the anti-gay bill matter. Almost 250 days or 30 days after the law was passed by Parliament, but there are suits in the Supreme Court seeking to stop the president from assenting it. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Right, Felicity Nelson. I suppose yesterday, if you guys were following the interview with Joy News with Kwame Pianim, and when he mentioned that, you know, the president should have intervened for there to be an amnesty right after you are arrested and put before court, you guys must have been celebrating that. The president, how is he going to do that? Except tell the Attorney General, don't prosecute any further. But some people clearly, as we have heard from the police and the Attorney General, did some wrong and they have to face the music.
Right.
That's what you do in a country of the rule of law. We're talking about Galamsey. Same thing. If the laws are enforced, we have a good society.
Yeah, we shouldn't treat our laws as suggestions. Yeah, I agree with you, Samson.
So, why are you saying, or you support the groups that say free the citizens?
Well, because I think that largely, if you look at the video like of certain people's arrests, I'm not going to mention myself, I might be included, I might not be included. And at the time, you know, when you're picking up trotro mates who had just stopped to pick up customers, when you've included people who are Okada riders who are picking up someone whose wife was in hospital and he was just buying coconut, and you pick him along and, you know, you have him in what I would call illegal detention for over about 17 days, then I do think that there should be a call for, you know, some kind of amnesty, absolutely. And especially because when you're doing indiscriminate swoops, especially when you're doing indiscriminate swoops.
What do you mean indiscriminate swoops?
Well, if there's people standing by a wall and you pick up everybody next to the wall, then they're standing on the wall and it's not illegal to stand next to a wall, at least I'm not aware. You know, maybe it is, but I'm not sure it is. And I'm no lawyer. And you pick up everybody around that wall, that's an indiscriminate swoop. Because when you start including people buying coconut, motor, you know, mates, trotro mates, that's indiscriminate.
So,
and you pick up people from hospitals.
Mm-hmm. The person who was picked from the hospital?
Yes, Benjamin Daku.
Benjamin Daku.
Yes.
What was it about?
Well, the thing is, Benjamin is a convener of Democracy Hub. He's always been a convener of Fix the Country or the protest. So he's not like an unknown person, right? So that kind of, for me, kind of explains why he was picked up, even though he didn't actually attend the protest. So he went to visit Oliver when Oliver was in hospital after Oliver had been arrested, and he was picked up from there. So he didn't actually attend the protest. And, you know, the media was there. So I'm saying this especially because the media, there's pictures, there's videos. And, you know, I'm actually kind of imploring the media or anybody to show a single video or a picture.
But they may argue that as a convener of the demonstration, you don't have to be physically there because by law, the organizers have responsibilities. The law says if things go wrong, there's damage to public property, the organizers will be held responsible, even though that is a civil aspect. It's not criminal.
Right.
So they may have to defend why
so that's not what's happened.
They are arresting. Okay.
That's not what's happened at all.
People are very mad at Oliver for taking the key to the police tow truck.
Right.
Because they say there's no provocation. Why did he take it?
Okay, so I wasn't actually there when he took the key. So I just want to make that clear. I wasn't there. I was still at home at the time. But I've seen videos, and people who were there, I got accounts from people who were there, saying that at the time it was the truck for our supplies. This was the truck that had like the water, the placards and everything. And people were standing, when they tried to tow the truck, people were actually standing in front of the truck, trying to stop them from towing it. So whilst the police would have trampled people who were trying to stop them from towing the truck, because people were like lying on the floor, sitting on the car and all of that. So they would have actually come to some kind of harm. So that seems to explain, from watching the videos, and that's some kind of an explanation for what happened with Oliver. But again, I said, I wasn't there, I didn't see this for myself. So I've seen videos from the videos of him taking the key. I've also seen videos of the people who were like lying on the car trying to, you say, no, you can't take the car, that kind of thing. So I don't think that enough, I can just say the police did not make enough of an effort to actually remove the people who had stopped, who were like lying on the floor in front of the car and that. So they didn't actually try and get them out of harm's way. So that I can see that clearly from the videos.
I've seen the video too. It's very concerning. That the police tried to tow your supplies vehicle away. And people were standing trying to prevent, and they were still trying to do so. Now, look, the court will determine whether somebody is guilty or not.
Absolutely.
For burning on the
Party
street,
paraphernalia,
blocking roads to essential service providers like the 37 military hospital and the party staff. But some of us have been very angry, and you would have heard me, that you don't use an unlawful means to correct an unlawful thing. Once you say something is unlawful, you take the lawful processes. It's taking how many days to get out of custody?
Okay, so I just want to start with the fact that when I was, taken by the police did not actually tell me I was under arrest. I was actually doing a Facebook Live. They grabbed me, wrestled my phone out of my hand, didn't say you're under arrest for X, Y, and Z. Until I got to the Railways police station and I saw the statement the investigator had written, I realized I was actually under arrest for illegal assembly. So my rights in terms of making a phone call, in terms of being able to contact family, none of that was ascribed to at the time. And so I want to start with those unlawful acts. And then once bail was granted, then while I was in police custody as well, when I was moved to Cantonment police station, when I got there, I said I needed to call my family. So from the time my phone was taken when I was arrested, when I was arrested, the police had my phone for about a good 10 days. I had not seen my phone. So I didn't actually have my phone at the police station. So I got to the police station, I said, I need to call my family. I'm asthmatic. I need to let them know so they can bring my inhaler. They told me, no, your phone's not here, so you can't make a phone call. I'm like, I don't have my phone here because it's in police custody. I don't actually even know which policeman.
They would normally offer you a
They said no.
They
said no. And so I went into the cell. In the night, I actually had an asthma attack.
I can't believe that this happened.
I had an asthma attack, and then I was taken to the police hospital. We get to the police hospital, they said, they did whatever, and they said, I needed an inhaler. And it was 140 cedis, and the policeman who took me to the police hospital did not have 140 cedis, so they said they couldn't afford to buy the inhaler. So there was a lot of back and forth between them and the doctor saying, oh, because of course, when you're a suspect... You
eventually got it?
No, I didn't get it. So they went around to get me...
Come on, this is a situation which means you literally could die.
And I have family members who have died from, asthma attacks. and they had to do like something else called nebulization. So they bought the mask and then they kind of...
I know about that.
So that ended up having to do, so that was 75 cedis, so that they could afford. And I just want to say this, while all of that was happening, my family had found I was at Cantonments and had been there 3 times. My sister had been to the Cantonments police station 3 times. And the 3rd time, she told them, can she just please leave my inhaler? They told her I wasn't there. The police told her I was not there.
Wherever you were, they ought to take it and let you have it.
Exactly. Exactly. So
I can't believe what you're telling me.
And this is what happened. This is what happened. And so for me, so when you're talking about unlawful things, I just want to kind of put that out there, that these are the kind of things that were happening. But it's not about me, Samson.
Right,
It's not about me. It's not even about us who were arrested. It's about the system that allows this to happen, because I doubt that I'm the first person this has happened to. When I was in the cells, I got talking to other inmates who had never been able to call any of their friends, people who have been there for 6 months, 10 months, and they've never been able to call, so they don't even know they're in there. So that means they have no access to legal counsel, and they're in a police cell. I've met people who have been in police cell for 4 years in different police stations. So it's not just about me. It's about how our criminal justice system treats suspects like slaves, treats them like people without rights. That's what it's really about.
Whoa. But there are those who say, whilst we all cry around that, those of us who think there's injustice being done to you, cry around that you're being held wrongly and so on and so forth, you guys just may be happy that you wanted to do a 3-day thing and you've ended up securing a situation where the entire nation and the world has given attention for 3 weeks or more.
Absolutely. The thing is, one thing that kept me going whilst I was in the cell was knowing the conversation was ongoing. So for me, I felt like, you know what, I've actually achieved me losing my liberty was worth something. Ghana is deserving of the loss of my liberty. Like, it's worth the sacrifice, and it was a worthwhile sacrifice. If this means that the Galamsey conversation can be moved forward, if moves are going to be taken, then it was worth it. So yes, most of us we don't regret the fact that we were in police custody. We're actually glad that at least doing that has actually brought a lot of awareness. There's a lot of people who are not paying attention to the issue. The media has been so consistent on the Galamsey issue, since, so that it's been about nearly 3 weeks now where there's been real consistency on the issue, where everybody's talking about it. So at least that awareness, it's important. So for me, I'm happy, and Ghana is definitely worth that sacrifice. You got bail
on which day?
Pardon?
You got bail on which day? How many days?
I got bail on Monday. So
that is how many days after?
So that was about 14 days.
14 days.
15 days, yeah.
And then it took how many more days before?
2 days.
Your bail was?
Yes, like
processed.
Over 48 hours.
And some have had like 17, 18 days.
Yes. No, and so the last group got theirs the next, so some people had got bail and got theirs 3 days later.
Okay. We will schedule a special time to have, maybe all of you, to have a discussion and to look into the law, and to also examine whatever lessons may be learned in these processes and in organizing elections. But thank you, organizing demonstrations. But thank you very much for making time to be with us.
Thank you
for
having me.
Felicity Nelson. Right. Thank you. So I have been trying to raise 2 gentlemen on the phone, and it's been difficult, but I understand one just succeeded in joining us. Sam George, thank you very much. Now let's try and get some footages of their demonstration, and you will see what Sam George led in the course of the week, blaming the Chief Justice, and their comments are direct at the Chief Justice that, there has been a delay, and which they suspect is deliberate, in not getting the case over with so that the president will sign assent to the anti-gay bill, let's call it bail, to become law. It's been 220, almost 230 days. But is it really the case that the Chief Justice is to blame or the Supreme Court is to blame? Sam George.
Yes. Good morning, Samson, and good morning to your viewers and listeners. The fact is simple. We are simply using the standard of the Supreme Court and demanding that the precedent that has been established by the Supreme Court should be applied in the family values case. We have seen a press conference addressed by a gentleman from the Supreme Court making all kinds of false allegations. and suggesting that the case is not ripe before the court. That is a palpable falsehood. The injunction case, which is the reason why Parliament is unable to transmit the bill to the President, has been fully executed before the court. All filings and pleadings have been completed. In fact, the Chief Justice, who was presiding judge of the panel, had given 17th of July for her judgment. He chose not to give judgment on that day. So any suggestion by anybody, be it from the Judicial Service or a judge of the Supreme Court, that the case is not ripe for judgment is an untruth and it's factually incorrect. So let's state that for the fact. Now, if you look at the precedent that has been set by the Supreme Court, and I'll give you two cases this year, just this year, two cases. In one of the cases, Nick Mako Samuado was lawyer for Roxanne Nelson Dafiamepo in the injunction petition against the approval of ministers in Parliament. Nick Mako Samuado filed his documents in the morning before the Supreme Court. That same day at 2 p.m., the Chief Justice caused a bailiff to present him with a notice of hearing for the next day. As we speak, he will have to go to court the next day. The Chief Justice heard the case and dismissed the injunction suit. As we speak, and this was in March this year, as we speak, the Attorney General is even yet to file a response to the injunction writ. So without a response from the Attorney General, the Chief Justice proceeded to hear a matter that was before her court and pronounced judgment. Samson, with the greatest of respect, in another case of Bernard Ahiafo and two others, you were the lawyer in that case. Again, within 24 hours, in fact, the same day you filed your writ, the Chief Justice caused you to be served with a notice of hearing for the next day. And the Attorney General came in that same day. You were compelled to get his response the next day and argue your case out, and she passed judgment.
That was for an interlocutory process, not the case itself. Not the case itself. That was for an interlocutory process. And the Nipapo Samuado one you refer to is also for the interlocutory process, an application, not the substantive suit.
Not the substantive suit.
Hello, Sam George.
The reason why, hello, can you hear me? The reason why,
go ahead, quickly.
The reason why we are unable to transmit the bill to the President is not the substantive case. It is the interlocutory injunction. And in this instance, all arguments and pleadings have been completed.
Okay.
So the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court have no reason not to pass a hearing in that interlocutory injunction case and allow the processes continue to the President.
Thank you, Sam George. Thank you for your time. That will be all. We have been trying to raise the GBA PRO, Xavier Kudje. I understand we just got him. So, Xavier Kudje, quickly, what is your response? The facts as we have seen them, and I try to correct Sam George on the other issue, is that the writs themselves, the three that have been filed against the transmission, against the anti-Galamsey bill itself, the writs are not ripe for hearing. He is suggesting that the court or the CJ can fast-track the process in the same way that the court or the CJ fast-tracked the interlocutory processes. What do you say?
I think that the brief I have from the registrar of the Supreme Court is that there's an application pending by one of the defendants in the Richie Sky case for leave to file his statement of case. So I think that unless and until that application is heard, and that application was filed, I'm told, at the beginning of this month, and it will be heard sometime next week. My only concern is that St. George and Co, Honorable St. George and Co, could have done some search at the registry before proceeding on their process. And the other concern I have is the kind of language that the processors use when they go to the Supreme Court.
So let's stay on the substance. Let's stay on the substance.
Can speed up the process.
Let's stay on the substance. What would have the search that you wanted them to do? What could they have revealed?
It would have revealed to them that at least one of the parties in the case had an application pending, and for that reason, unless and until the application is heard on its merit, the court couldn't have.